Then we went on. After that, we had to get on another boat, and we went all the way across the ocean to Naples in Italy. We landed, and we were supposed to have a room ready in a hotel in Naples. We were going to stay and see the great big volcano, Vesuvius, and some things there before we went on to Paris. But do you know what? My father got very sick on the ship as we were going across to Naples. And we called in the ship doctor who was Italian and didn't know any English. And he looked in my father's mouth and down his throat, and he threw up his arms, and he talked a lot in Italian, but we couldn't understand what he was saying. And he told them that we were all to stay there in the room with my father until we landed at Naples. Well, when we were on the ship, my father had become so sick with a terrible sore throat, and we didn't know what it was that was bothering him. But as soon as we got to Naples, we went up into the hotel, the pension as they called it, and got in our room, and then immediately my mother called a doctor. She wanted a doctor to look at my father because he was so sick. And right away a doctor came, and he examined him. And when he examined him, he said, "This man has diphtheria, and we've got to take him into a place where we can watch him and keep him under control." So they took him away, and we didn't know where they were taking him, or whether we would be able to see him or anything about it. But we watched as they took him away on a little cart that they hauled him down the hotel hall. And we waited and waited, and then the hotel people came up to our room, and they said, all of you people are in quarantine, and you're not allowed to leave this room for, I think it was about 8 or 10 days. They would bring us our food to the room, and then they would have to scrub the whole room down, and they took all of our papers and things like that, because even our money, they took our money away from us because we weren't allowed to have anything that could carry the germs of diphtheria to somebody else. So here we were without any money. We couldn't leave the room, and we were just not knowing what to do. We had another lady missionary traveling with us. So it was my mother and this other lady and my sister and myself in that hotel room for over a week. And we didn't know what to do with ourselves, so we were lucky to find that when we looked out the window of our room, there was Vesuvius up there, right in the middle of our view. Just a beautiful sight out there, and we could watch it erupt at that time every 7 minutes. You could kind of tell when it erupted that there had been 7 minutes go by. And my sister and I got the idea we would see who could draw the prettiest picture of Vesuvius. We had some paper, so we would sit and look out the window, and we'd draw pictures of Vesuvius. While we were in seclusion in the hotel, one other thing we had to do was to all of us line up in the morning, and we had to gargle with ST37, diluted half with water. And every one of us had to do that every morning and every evening of every day that we were there. And there must be a charm about ST-37 because the rest of us did not get diphtheria, even though we had been right in the same, all of us, all of the family had been right in the same room with my father on the ship when he was so sick. And when we were then able to get out of the hotel, we wanted to find my father, find out where he was and how he was. So we went and asked the authorities. And this was at the time Mussolini was in control of Italy. So we weren't sure just what might happen to him. But when we went to the authorities, they said, "We will show you where your father is or where your husband is." So they took us over to a sort of a big park-like place in the city of Naples, where there weren't any buildings for about a square. And in this square of just land, there was a little tiny stone house or building, just one room, and it had bars on it, on the windows, and a solid door. And they said, "That's where your husband is, in that little building." Well, they had taken him in there because they thought that he couldn't get close to anybody then to give them the diphtheria. And we went over, and I remember I had to stand up on a box to see in the window that had bars. And there was my father inside, and all there was an iron cot with a pad on it and a little table with a candle stick and candle there. No electricity. And they had kept him in there all that time. I guess they had doctored him and probably given him medicine to help him get better and food, but he was feeling much better at that time, but he wasn't allowed out because they hadn't been able to get a clear test of his throat yet. But he was feeling much better. And we were so relieved to find that he was much better that my mother and my sister and the other lady traveling with us all took the rest of the day off and went over. We managed to get some money by telegraphing to Pittsburgh in the United States and telling them what had happened, and we needed money. So they had sent us some money, and we went over to Vesuvius and went up Vesuvius that day and saw Vesuvius at the top. They'd only let you stay up there 5 minutes because in 7 minutes, from one eruption to the next, so you couldn't stay there very long. And they had an incline, a little car that went up tracks to the top so that you could get up there pretty fast and get out of there pretty fast too. And that was my main memory of Naples. And when my father finally got out of his little hospital, he went up Vesuvius by himself because he wanted to see it too.